Welcome to another episode of the Gull Math Action Podcast. So we took a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton, Hove, Albion and Crawley Town. I'm Matt Poll, and this week I'm joined by Brighton writer Derren Howard, Sam Morton, who covers both Albion and Crawley Town, and Reds expert Mark Dunford. Brighton left it late to snatch a draw at the Premier League's basement club Wolves on Sunday, while Saturday saw Crawley fall to yet another disappointing League Two defeat, this time at Cambridge United. This week, we'll look back at Brighton and Crawley's trip to the Black Country and Cambridgeshire respectively, reflect on Albion's 2025-26 season so far, and bring you news of a backroom departure at the Reds. You can read all the stories we're talking about, videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Jan-Paul van Heck's late header denied Wolves a first Premier League win of the season as the hosts had Vitor Pereira sent off at Molineux. But for Bruggen's unfortunate first half own goal looked like giving the hosts a first league victory since April, but Van Heck's bullet header found the bottom corner with 4 minutes left to earn Albion a point. The draw means Brighton have now lost just once in the last 12 league outings at Wolves. But by the sounds of it, Derren, it sounds like the Seagulls are far from their best. Sum that Brighton performance up for us, please.
Yeah, you were right, Matt. They were far from their best, and it had the two certainties of Brighton this season, that they struggle against the low block, and Carlos Baliba was substituted at half-time again as well. So if everything else is unpredictable in the world, then those two are bound to happen at the moment. But they were a bit below par, and it was. The goal, it was unfortunate. It was actually quite a very good save from Bart Verbruggen. He tipped the powerful effort onto the crossbar, hit the crossbar, came off his back and then into the goal. So unlucky for Verbruggen. He's yet to keep a clean sheet this season. So it's a bit of a problem. But it was kind of the worst possible situation at Wolves as well, because they got their noses in front and then. Sort of as they're perfectly entitled to, they just defended and really sat back and made life awkward for Brighton. They were still a threat on the break. Strand Larsen was very very lively going forward, and Van Hecker had his hands full dealing with him. But it was just that cutting edge from Brighton again as well. Their attacking play is nowhere near as good as it was. Yankuba Minte was a handful. Karol Matoma was injured, so Gruder came in for him, and he in flashes Gruder looked okay, but he never really looked like being capable of unlocking the defence. Danny Welbeck was quiet up front again as well, but they finally got their reward. They kept pushing, and as you mentioned, it was a great header from Van Hecker. He was one of the players that really stood out for Brighton that day. He was a real leader, and his equaliser was quite important as well. So probably Brighton deserved their point, and it moved. A big win at Wolves could have moved them up to 7th. It now puts them into 12th place, which doesn't look great, but a point is still good. It was frustrating. There was no lack of effort. It was a tough game. And, some of the Brighton players were really blowing at the end. They put everything into it. Lots of endeavour, but little in terms of quality, unfortunately.
Brighton's draw in Wolverhampton came off the back of an excellent win at Chelsea. Derren's kind of alluded to there, Sam. Is there a sense of frustration that Seagulls have once again not kicked on after a statement victory? You just got to look at the win over City and didn't quite do it after that. Or would supporters have been satisfied with the mental strength Albion have showed, having gone a goal down away from home?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix of emotions, isn't it? I think once again there is frustration because Brighton obviously, as you say, have had a brilliant win there at Stamford Bridge, and they've done really well to win that game from a goal down, and you're kind of just looking for them to really build on that. And Welbeck obviously started the match as a reward really for his heroics at the end of that match at Stamford Bridge, but he wasn't very good, to be honest, at Wolves. He was really kind of off the pace. Started off with that half-hearted clearance with a header that obviously then smashed in on goal for the opening goal. And as Derren said, Verbruggen did make a good save, and it was really unlucky. But to be fair, Wolves could have had 2 or 3, and they hit the post in the second half. Verbruggen made another couple of good saves, and there was also a huge chance that Wolves had to go 2-0 up, but they skied it over the bar. So there's definite concern there for Brighton. Obviously, they're playing against a team that have failed to win yet this season, and they, for a lot of it, were second best. And yes, they did do well to get that equaliser, and it was a brilliant header and a lovely cross from Stefanos Simas, who we're looking to see more from, I think, to see more of, I should say, because he's not really had too many opportunities, to be honest. But he's come in and done really well in the glimpses that we've seen from him, and he's definitely added something a bit different to that attack that isn't quite firing on all cylinders yet. There's definitely been some moments and glimpses of brilliance from certain individuals, but it's not quite clicked just yet. I think Jorginho has definitely had a bit of a rusty start, and he was obviously on the bench for this one and came on and played with a bit of a point to prove. And there were some moments where he kind of kept hold of the ball too long, but you could just see how desperate he was to try and unlock that door, and he was definitely energetic and had a really good shot saved superbly by Sam Johnston, and you kind of felt that was a big chance, and time was running out, but they managed to get the equaliser in the end, and it's definitely a point gained, I think, in this scenario, because they very easily could have lost it.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been calls in some quarters, mainly online I've seen this, to drop Seagull skipper Lewis Dunk. Lewis Dunk has been in the Albion starting 11 for just 2 clean sheets in a calendar year, the 0-0 draw with Brentford in December and a 1-0 win at Newcastle last October. I think it's quite plain to see that Brighton do have defensive problems, having recorded just 4 clean sheets in 28 Premier League games. So is taking the captain out the firing line the answer, Derren? Quite a big summer splashes for Diego Coppola and Olivier Buscagli. They're yet to make their Premier League debuts. Is it maybe time to give those two a go at some stage?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I can see where the fans are coming from. And last season, I would probably have agreed with them. I would have said yes. Dunk is maybe part of the problem. But I honestly, the first 6 or 7 games, I really don't see it this year. I think he's had a good pre-season, and he looks the fittest he has for some time. And I actually think he's playing much better than he was last season. And the partnership with Van Heck is a good one. I know they haven't kept a clean sheet, but I think you can also look at the situation in front of them where the midfield has been not at its best as well. They've had Yassine Ayari's probably been their most consistent midfielder, but Carlos Baliba, who last season offered, quite a bit of protection in front of them. He hasn't helped, in my opinion. But yeah, I think Dunk is doing okay. I think I can see why the fans are saying that. But having watched them, against the likes of Manchester City, I thought against Erling Haaland, Dunk and Van Heck were an excellent combination. The best I've seen those two play together for quite some time. And actually, it was Van Heck who actually had probably a few shaky moments this season. He conceded a penalty at Bournemouth, and then he's then scored the own goal against Tottenham as well. But he showed his character, and then he's hit back against, and got the equaliser against Wolves as well. So for me, I think it's probably the best centre-back pairing that Brighton have got at the moment. Coppola, he came in for 10 million, and Buscagli on a free from PSV. Coppola's played twice in the Premier League. He's been introduced as a late substitute on 2 occasions, and I think he's one for the future. He looks very physical, and sometimes in the last 5 or 10 minutes, Herzella's brought him on just to shore up the defence and try and hold on in the closing stages, as they did against Manchester City. And he looks good. He looks good. He moves well. He's physical, 6'4", and nice and strong. And he's played in the Carabao. He started both of the Carabao Cup wins, as has Buscagli as well. And I think there's more to come from them, particularly Buscagli. He'll be frustrated that he hasn't had a chance in the Premier League, and hopefully he will be able to prove himself. But I think for now, though, with Newcastle coming up, I think Dunk starts for me. But that's my view anyway. Yeah.
While we're on the subject of potential tweaks to the team, Sam, do you think there are other tweaks that Hertzela can make to the side? You mentioned potentially giving one of the Greek lads a go instead of Jorginho. I've also seen some people suggest maybe bringing in Jason Steele for Bruggen. What changes would you make, if any?
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one for Fabian, I think, to kind of find that right balance. Obviously, he's got a few different options that he can go to, and we've seen obviously him switch up a little bit. Obviously, as we've mentioned with Welbeck coming in, I can't imagine he'll start from start from the off again for the next one. I think because he made such an impact off the bench at Chelsea, there might be a feeling that he can probably do that again. So it'll be interesting to see if Jorginho goes back into that false nine role. But yeah, I definitely would like to see Zima start a match in the Premier League and just to see what he can do from the off. Because as I say, we've seen glimpses. It was showing what he can do in setting his teammates up as well. It was such a great cross for Van Heck. So yeah, you'd like to see him get an opportunity in the team. And interesting to see if he keeps starting Belieber and taking him off, or if he's going to try and maybe bring him on. And it's definitely a problem for Brighton at the moment. They're still not able to get the best from Belieber, and he definitely wasn't the worst performer by any means. And he did obviously make the comment that it was to do with the yellow card that he decided to bring him off at half-time, but he wasn't the only one that was in the book. There's I think at least 3 others, and Fabi wasn't happy with that either, with the referee giving out yellow cards quite quick. But I don't think he can have any complaint about the manner of the yellow card that Belieber got. To be honest, it was quite a late challenge, and it kind of summed things up for him at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if he starts again. But yeah, I think I'd definitely like to see Coppola or even Biscaglia get a chance in the Premier League just to see what they can do in defence. Obviously, Lewis Dunk isn't getting any younger. He's not going to be able to start every game. We saw obviously Adam Webster start to come in on a more regular basis. So it'll be interesting to see if they can start to mould Coppola or Biscaglia into the team. But obviously, Van Heck's going to be there to stay, and there's no moving him, and rightly so too. But in terms of the goalkeeper, I think there's nothing to worry about there. I think Barbara Bruggen should keep his place in the team. I think, as you mentioned, he did have actually quite a good game against Wolves, and the goal was quite unlucky. To be honest, I don't think he could have done much about it. So yeah, I've not got any concern with the goalkeeper, and I don't think that there should be any changes in that department at the moment.
Well, we now move into an international break, which, as Derren said, means Brighton's men's first team won't take to the field again until the 18th of October at home to Newcastle in Premier League. And as the action pauses and we have a chance to reflect, Derren, how would you assess Albion's season so far? As you mentioned, they're 12th in the league after 7 games, but they're also through to the round of 16 in the Carabao Cup. What do you make of their campaign at this still fairly early stage?
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, inconsistent. 3 draws, 2 wins and 2 defeats so far for Brighton. They probably deserved a couple more points, but overall they just haven't been clinical or good enough in the key moments. But it's sort of the little details which has frustrated them, really. You know, and I think that highlighted against sort of Fulham and Tottenham, where the games that they were winning should have closed out for the win, but just didn't have the game management to do so. And I think that's what's frustrating a lot of the fans, and why some of the fans are on Herzella's back a little bit. But you cannot argue with the spirit of the team, though. They show up and they compete, and I don't think there's been one occasion so far this season where they've lost for the lack of trying. You know, I think the main thing is that the key players at the moment, the big players who you need to perform, have been off the pace. Sam mentioned Carlos Belieber. You can't hide from that. He's been poor, probably a bit of a liability to keep starting all the time at the moment. But Mitoma, the same. Jorginho struggled for goals. Welbeck too. Other than his brace against sort of 10 men against Chelsea, where there was a bit of extra space for him, he's really struggled. And I think the attacking situation was always going to be a gamble. They sold Pedro. Evan Ferguson went out on loan as well, and the Greek lads, they weren't ready. They're untested in the Premier League. So, but at some stage, you've got to think that Herzella's got to be tempted just to say, okay, let's just give them a go, because otherwise you're not going to find out. You know, there's Tissimas, I think, is probably ahead of Kostulas at the moment in the fitness and in terms of being ready. So I'd probably like to see him start against Newcastle and have a good run out. So that would be interesting to see how they go. But I think personally, Herzella was left a bit short there, really, by the club. I think they didn't replace Pedro. Ferguson was never really in the plans. And I think just to have that reliance on Danny Welbeck, who's 34, Jorginho should have done a bit better, but he hasn't. They've tried him in different roles, higher up the pitch, back in his number 10 role. So yeah, I think he's been left a bit short on that. But on the plus side, I think Minte's looked very good. He's been absolutely electric this season, easily Brighton's most dangerous player. De Kuyper looks a real bargain at left back, and I think Kadioglu as well. He deserves a mention as well. I think he's been impressive. So there's been some good, but lots to work on.
Going back to the Greek lads, surely they spent a lot of money on that Kostoulas, Derren, didn't they? Surely the amount they spend means that at some point they'll surely have to play, won't he? You can't spend that amount of money on a kid for him not to play.
Exactly. So 50 million for the pair of them, 30 million for Kostoulas, and there has to be a time where they think, okay, they've been through. He keeps calling it an adaptation process where they're getting up to speed, and you just sort of think, I'll just let them go because the others aren't really doing much, and you just think, just give them a chance to see what they can do. And you get into the point where it's sort of, well, they can't do any worse than what the others are doing. So it's, just give them young, hungry, obviously talented. Just unleash them, put them out there and see how they go. But so that would be an interesting call. I think after this international break, you may see them sort of playing a bit more. Kostoulas was in the Premier League matchday squad for the first time at Wolves. So hopefully that's a sign that those two are both working their way into the first team.
Yeah, absolutely. Hashtag free the Greeks. We'll get that trended on Twitter, Derren. Moving on to Crawley Town, a 3-1 loss at Cambridge consigned the Reds to a 7th defeat in 11 games. Shane Lavery, Killian Kouassi and Peli Radupanzu struck for the U's while Kabi Shamanga netted Crawley's consolation goal. The defeat leaves the Reds 4th from bottom in League 2 and just 2 points above the drop. You were at the Abbey Stadium, weren't you, Mark, for this one on commentary duty? It sounds like another incredibly dispiriting afternoon for everyone involved at Crawley Town.
It was, yeah. First of all, I'd just like to say I wish my first two names were Peli Ruddock because my life would be a lot more interesting, I think. Yeah, it was just such a strange afternoon because I know I do this a lot, but I look at the stats and Crawley had 71% possession. They had twice as many shots on goal as Cambridge United. They had They had 495 passes compared to Cambridge's 203. So you look at that and you think Crawley have absolutely dominated that game, but at no point did you feel that Crawley were going to win that game on Saturday. It was bizarre. I mean, and I think it was the manner of the goals as well that Cambridge scored that was just really dispiriting and demoralising for the players, the fans, the bench, the staff, everybody. There was just a real sense of, oh, God, every time sort of Cambridge went forward. They scored after 12 minutes, Cambridge. It was a corner that came in. There was a little bit of luck because I think it hit, was it Badrami? It hit somebody in the Crawley defence on the chest and it just fell at the feet of a Cambridge player who just had to hit the target and he did. And then it was the start of the second half. Crawley had dominated the game after that, without really creating anything clear cut. And then at the start of the second half, Cambridge just hit him with a double blow, and it was two really poor goals. The first one was a corner which they just failed to clear again, and the second one they were just opened up. And Scott Lindsay raised it afterwards. Actually, he said, "You look at that third goal because a winger went down, beat Josh Flint, crossed it in, and then Panzu came in and just siphoned it home." And there was nobody else in the picture other than the three defenders. None of the midfielders had come back to try, and there was time for them to do it because the winger came sort of had to take it around Josh Flint and that. So there was plenty of time. And that's what Scott said afterwards. They weren't running. Nobody was running for me today, and they're not going to run for me. They're not going to play for me, sort of thing. But again, I know we're going to come on to what Scott said about divine intervention. But Dion Conroy hit the post when it looked like it was harder to not score. Josh Flynn had a free header, which he should have at least got on the target. But it was just really odd. But on the stats as well, the corner count. Crawley had 10 corners. Cambridge had 2. They scored from both their corners, Cambridge. And Scott, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but afterwards, after we stopped recording and everything on Saturday, he said, "Weren't our corners rubbish?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I think we had 10 corners and 12 of them the keeper claimed," sort of thing. So it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, obviously, there. But it was just a really frustrating performance. And it got really tetchy. Jack Rolls came on and seemed determined to just annoy everybody. The fans, the Crawley fans had to be split apart, the young and the old, because the young were singing songs.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, we could see something happening in the stewards, but Steve Herbert, our columnist, wrote this week that some of the younger fans need to grow up a little bit, and when we're losing, you've got to realise that sometimes that happens, but just don't turn on your team like they did. I didn't hear what was sung, right. I don't know what was said, but the stewards had to stand in between them at one point, and that was in the Crawley away fan. And it's just like, what's going on? But I know we're going to get on to Leighton Orient later, much more positive at Leighton Orient. So not all is lost, but Saturday was just a really odd, dispiriting day for Crawley Town. And if you watch Scott Lindsay's video on our website, he just seemed... It wasn't even if he was broken, he was just fed up, I think. Fed up and cross and angry and disappointed, yeah. As were most people involved with Crawley that day.
Yeah, well, Mark might be optimistic. Scott Lindsay in his post-match interview was decidedly the opposite. He said Crawley were weak, easy to score against, and as Mark said, suggested divine intervention might be needed to turn their fortunes around. I don't think any of us predicted this, Sam, I think it's safe to say. Where and why has it gone wrong, so wrong for the rest of this season? And at what point do we say Crawley are in crisis? As we mentioned, it was their 7th defeat in 11 league games. It makes for particularly grim reading at the moment, doesn't it?
Certainly does. Yeah. It's not something we could envisage coming. As you say, really, I think when Scott Lindsay came back, we know he's worked miracles in League Two before, and we were kind of expecting him to do it again. Obviously, he was unlucky not to keep them up in League One, and I suppose there was just the expectation that they would then have a good season in League Two and just hit the ground running. But it really hasn't worked out like that at all. And I think when your own manager is coming out post-match and saying you're weak and easy to score against, it just tells you how deep the problems go. And obviously Scott, he's not just being emotional, he's being honest as well. And he's just saying what a lot of the fans have been thinking and feeling and seeing for weeks now, to be honest. And defensively, it's obviously not been great. There's no real consistency there and no authority in key moments. And just I think when they concede early, the heads drop. And we've seen that far too often, where things aren't going their way and it just all falls apart and crumbles really quickly, which is something that Scott has been really angry to see, and hasn't seen enough fight in key moments, and they definitely are conceding kind of cheap, avoidable goals as well, and that's something which needs to change, and just to be able to score more goals as well, because that's been a real issue. They've not been able to score enough goals to win games. Scott's talked about an invisible wall between them and the goal, and it's everything seems to just be going against them. Really, it really hasn't worked out at all so far. And are they in crisis? It's obviously not a word you want to kind of throw around, but if they're not already, then they're absolutely teetering on the edge of one. I think form-wise, it's pretty grim reading, and if it continues much longer, they'll find themselves in a relegation scrap, and they could be out of the Football League if they're not careful. Yeah,
that'd be dreadful. And Mark, I also saw that Gavin Holohan spoke to the media afterwards. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, I think he said that they had the quality within the squad, but the players needed to stand up and be counted. Do the players need to carry the can a little bit as well? I know that Scott's got a fair bit of grief, but the players also. Do you think they need to take some accountability for their recent form?
They absolutely do, yeah, very much so. They, like Scott said, that there was a few on Saturday that just didn't look committed to the cause. I know that's a big accusation to go, but sometimes when they lost the ball, you could just see that they weren't running back, tracking back. That third goal was the prime example where there was nobody in the box to sort of help the defence out. Going back to, you mentioned about the Lewis Dunk conversation, there are people calling for Dion Conroy not to be playing at the moment. He doesn't seem to be on his top form, and he is the Lewis Dunk equivalent for Crawley Town. He's Scott Lindsay's general in the middle. He's the captain of the club captain, but he just he doesn't seem to. He's not hit the form he did certainly during the promotion season, and he hasn't seemed as reliable and calm on the ball as he has been in previous seasons. So it's just a blip in form, hopefully, but something's not clicking. And Scott said that on Saturday, actually. He just said, we just don't seem to click at the moment. And like Gavin Houlihan said, they've just got to stick together. They've got to stick together. I keep saying Houlihan, it's Holohan. Holohan. But they've got to stand up and be counted now. everybody's got to stick together and just really work hard now to get them out of this horrible situation at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to the Leyton Orient game on Tuesday night, Monday saw sporting director Tobias Phoenix leave the Reds by mutual consent. The former director of football operations at Bolton joined Crawley during last season when the Reds were relegated from League One. He leaves just over 2 months after KB Sports and Leisure completed a takeover of the club, and it is the latest change in a turbulent year for the Reds after former co-owner Preston Johnson resigned in July over the club's transfer strategy. What was the reaction for Phoenix's departure, Mark? What was his legacy? I think that might be a short answer. And where do the Reds go from here in terms of their recruitment?
With his legacy, God knows, because nobody got to know him. Nobody knew what he... I mean, I know he's a sporting director, so I'm assuming he was involved in transfers, in recruitment, the day-to-day running of the team, etc. and that. But, yeah, I requested a couple of times. So when Preston Johnson and Ben Levin were chairman and vice chairman, I asked a couple of times, could we have an interview with Tobias? Everybody wants to know who he is, what he does, etc. And I was told, oh, well, ask him, but he's quite a private person, so I'm not too hopeful that he want to do one. But he hit the headlines when he allegedly offered a fan out in the car park after a fan took exception to him and Preston appearing to be laughing after they conceded a goal against Cambridge. Apparently, the internal investigation said all he did was let's chat about this outside of the ground. So, but who knows what happened there? We don't know the full story. But the actual reaction was generally, I think, general reaction was good.
Yes.
I mean, after Saturday's game, there were a couple of fans, I think we discussed this now on Monday, that just went on social media and just said, this is not Scott's fault, this is not the player's fault, this is Tobias Phoenix's fault. Yeah. Why it's his fault, I don't know, and maybe we will, but maybe his legacy will be, once he left, things turned around and it was his fault. Who knows? But again, it might not get any better, it might get worse. So, and in terms of how it will change the recruitment, Preston Johnson left because he didn't like the way the recruitment was going. The recruitment doesn't seem to have worked so far, so maybe that's why they parted ways. Or that must be the reason why they parted ways, because it isn't working out how they'd all hoped. So I don't know what this means going forward. I mean, is Scott in charge of transfers now? Is someone else's? Something to ask Scott when we next speak to him. And does it mean a lot more work for Scott Lindsay, which he probably doesn't need right now because he needs to coach those players into putting in really good performances. So it's a really. I was and wasn't surprised on Monday morning because one, I didn't know. You never knew he was there, other than those big smiley photos when the new owners came in August. But we'll see in the next few games how much influence Tobias Phoenix had over this team. I imagine.
Moving back to matters on the pitch, Crawley Town's miserable week was compounded on Tuesday night as ex-Brighton striker Aaron Connolly netted an exquisite 93rd minute free kick to see Leyton Orient come from behind to beat the Reds 2-1 in the EFL Trophy. Louis Flower fired Crawley in front inside 3 minutes before Dimitri Mitchell levelled for the O's on 40 minutes. Crawley's late winner leaves Crawley second in Southern Group F, level on points with Holds Peterborough. Considering everything that's going on with their league campaign, Sam, I don't think the AFL Trophy will be particularly high on the Reds' priority list this season, but that must sting, surely, to lose it that way.
Absolutely, yeah. Even if the EFL Trophy isn't Crawley's main focus, the manner of the defeat, of course, will hurt. It's always frustrating, I guess, to take an early lead, concede an equaliser, and then lose it in stoppage time. And as you said, it was a moment of real quality, but it does add to what's becoming a very demoralising run of results. And yeah, as you say, it's the EFL Trophy, not the league, and priorities are elsewhere. But Crawley could have used a win just to stop the rot a bit, build a bit of belief and shift the mood around the place. But instead, it's another defeat, and pressure obviously does continue to mount on the players to turn it around. And regardless of what the competition is, when you lose and you concede late goals, it does feel like a gut punch, and also they're building up quickly, aren't they, at the moment, really, and they can start to take their toll. But despite that heartbreak, there were lots of positives to take, and Scott Lindsay will know that. It's easy to focus on on the result, especially when it continues a tough run. But in terms of performance, there were encouraging signs. So Crawley were bright in spells, played within 10, and some of the fringe players really put their hand up to be starting in the league as well. I think Max Anderson seemed lively in the midfield. Louis Flower took his goal well and showed energy throughout, and Ben Ratcliffe put in a composed display. So for what was a young side, there's a lot of maturity, and they will definitely give Lindsay something to think about ahead of Walsall's visit. And there's definitely, some question marks over what team Lindsay will put out, whether he'll obviously make changes from that league game and start to put in some of these players that have impressed in the cup. But he said it gives me things to think about, and it's great. It's a great game for us. We're playing the team who are top of the league, bringing them on. That's what I want to be all about. I want that to be a real incentive for us to play well and win, score and defend well, and nothing better than taking on the league leaders. I think it's a great opportunity for us now to try and turn the corner. And he's really encouraged by what he saw, the really good performances, and he kind of got an idea of what he wants to do for Saturday.
Yes, as you mentioned, the Reds' task doesn't get any easier as they welcome top of the table Walsall to the Broadfield Stadium on Saturday. The Saddlers have won 8 of their 11 League 2 games and sit just a point off Scott Lindsay's old team in second. It's another tough game. Mark, how do you see this one going?
I find that Tobias Phoenix there. I think he wants to do an interview.
Yeah, he's asked me if I fancied the Crawley Town Sporting Director job. I think I might have to politely decline.
No, it's gonna. Crawley, it'll be typical of Crawley went and won on Saturday, beating the league leaders, because they've done that before in previous seasons where they've had a run of bad results, lost poor teams. Like Barrow weren't a poor team; they're a well-organised team, but you shouldn't be losing for them at home. But Walsall will come top of the league, and Crawley will probably come beat them handsomely as well on Saturday. But yeah, Sam said about the selection issue he has, because if you put the two sides by side, there were 8 changes for Tuesday night's game against Leyton Orient, against the team that played Cambridge. You would have thought the Tuesday night team was the first choice team, and the Saturday team was not the first choice league side. So he's got some big decisions to make. Like Sam said, Max Anderson was excellent. I always find it odd that he doesn't play more, Max Anderson, because every time he plays, he gives 100%. He battles hard. He scores important goals at times. Against Charlton away last year, he scored the winner. It's going to be very, very interesting what the lineup looks like on Saturday. But Scott Lindsay said, bring them on. I think it's a really good fixture for them because they know they have to be good. I mean, they knew they had to be good against Cambridge, but but they've got to be at the top of their game to compete with Walsall. Have been really impressive this year. So but injury wise, we're waiting for an update on Harvey Davis's finger. So how long he's going to be out for? But Jojo Wallacott, he's been good. I wouldn't say he was at fault with any of the goals in the last 2 games. So hopefully he'll be. And he pulled off a really good save on Tuesday night against Leyton Orient. He's a really good shot stopper at times. But Adi Adeyemo, Scott said last week, we're hoping he'll be back. He picked up a knock against Barrow, but he said they were wrapping him in cotton wool last week, hoping they'd be ready for this week. Danny Cashman, I believe, will still be out. We'll have to see, but it's going to be really interesting who he picks in that side on Saturday. And they have got, although they lost, it was a really soft free kick the referee gave as well that led to the winner. So it could have easily been a 1-1 draw and then Crawley went on penalties, and then you're suddenly really positive because it's 4 defeats on the trot now. It looks worse than it probably is. I think they've got a little bit of momentum from the performance on Tuesday night. Hopefully they can carry that forward. I'd love to see Ben Ratcliffe get a start. And like I say, I think they can get something out of this. I think they can shock Walsall a little bit. And who knows? And the Tobias Phoenix news, the fans might be a little bit more buoyant. I don't know. It's horrible to criticise someone or cheer someone losing their job, but the Crawley fans seem to be doing that on social media, and hopefully that translates to positivity on Saturday to get behind the lads.
Yes, we can only hope. That leads us on quite nicely to score predictions. As we mentioned, no Brighton game this week due to the international break, but we have Crawley v Walsall. I don't know whether that summation you just gave there, Mark, is positivity, optimism, or anything like that, or we're just clutching at straws. How do you think Saturday's going to go?
I am going to go with my heart and say Crawley are going to win 2-1.
What does your head say?
A draw.
But they'll take a draw.
Go for 2-1.
2-1. Sam, they take a draw, wouldn't they? They bite your hand off for a draw.
They absolutely would bite your hand off for a draw, but I don't think they're going to get one. I think my head's saying a 2-1 defeat, unfortunately. Walsall have been really good this season, and I think they'll continue it.
And finally, Derren. I don't know. I don't know way of saying I think they're going to get hammered, I think.
No, Walsall look good, but because I'm easily swayed and Mark was very persuasive that Crawley are going to bounce back, I'm going to go for a 2-0 Crawley, I think. I'm going to think that they can pull up a shot.
Oh, we can only hope. Best of luck to Crawley Town this weekend, and thank you very much for joining us this week, chaps, as ever. Don't forget, you can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we will see you all next week for a very special episode.